What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, I'm reading your first little note here. It says she held one press conference and Trump folded like a cheap suit, and I have no... Who are we talking about here? Not the president of Mexico, is it?
You're damn right. We're talking. You know, it's so funny. You haven't heard a word about that because no one's been reporting on it because apparently it goes against the grain. I just got through listening to a clip of Jean Charest, who I respect entirely, saying, you know, that's how Trump, he hits you with a baseball bat, and then he comes back and tries to get... on Monday, when Trump, for all I know, sitting on his toilet with his phone, decided to, dictate policy to Mexico and Canada, saying that you will improve border security and staunch the fentanyl trade, and if not, there'll be 25% tariff slapped on all your goods. We saw some very interesting reactions here in Canada. We saw the Prime Minister of Canada claim he had a phone call right away with Donald Trump, but didn't give us any details. On the Tuesday, the delightfully named Claudia Sheinbaum, president of Mexico, was just elected in October, held a press conference. She wasn't working through sources or on background, and she recited a letter she was sending to Donald Trump saying, any tariff you institute will be responded to in kind by my country. This can extend to a lot of companies that you do business with, such as General Motors, Stellantis, and the Ford Motor Company, which has been in Mexico for 80 years, which I'm sure Trump doesn't even know where the hell a Ford Motor Company is, okay? Amazingly, that night she gets a phone call from Donald Trump, and then he's tweeting, well, we had a very, very profitable, very productive meeting, and she's agreed to close her northern border, and she holds a press conference afterwards, goes, I did no such thing. But you know what? Everyone's going to communicate in their own way. In other words, he comes after you with a baseball bat, hit him across the head with a chair.
Yeah, right.
This is not rocket science, especially when you're dealing with a gibbering lunatic like Donald Trump. You think his own people haven't been vomiting up blood all week, tearing their hair out, realizing that, no, I'm not just going to go after one trade partner worth $800 billion a year, Mexico. I'll go after the other one, Canada, that's worth $900 billion a year. And what response do we have here? Well, we have Justin Trudeau being very coy and very deep and very mysterious, but then turning around saying, well, you know, we're putting drones on the border, and, you know, we're going to be increasing security on the border. I was waiting for him to say we're going to have RCMP officers dressed as moose on the border. So just, and send a picture to Trump, just so he sees that we're doing something. We saw this so-called collection of Canadian premiers, supposedly Team Canada, who were anything but, where you've got like Francois Legault, basically being the guy in the airplane disaster movie. He keeps yelling, we're all going to die, until finally, overnight, somebody said, Frank, shut up, and he did. And I said, it's glad to see we have I'm glad to see that we have some kind of plan for dealing with President Trump. All that said, what's become clear is on one hand, you had one woman in Mexico saying, you want to fight? We'll have a fight. That's all you really need to know. And on the other hand, we have these dithering populist hacks, okay, these aphorism-spouting sloganeers who make it clear they're completely in over their heads and have made it clear, even to an intellect such as Donald Trump, that these guys are a bunch of clowns. They are completely divided, and I can knock them off one at a time. I can threaten them with anything. Because remember, this is not policy. This is a tweet. This is a single tweet. And now Canada has seemed to be standing on its head, hoping that this weekend Donald Trump doesn't think of something new to tell us what to do. But you know what? That's not guaranteed. And given the way this government, at all levels, I'll include Trudeau and every single premier in this country, the way they responded to this rubbish from Donald Trump does not fill me with any kind of confidence whatsoever.
You kind of wonder, so I remember this playing out, Jim, and I'm glad you brought it up. I kind of wonder what the next step is here. If you're Donald Trump, do you just sit back and say nothing now, just shut up because you sort of got this thing, as you said, had a chair whacked across the side of your head, or do you ramp this up to another level?
Well, he won't with Mexico because obviously it's clear he's going to get in a fight. And this is not, bullies don't like to get into fights. Bullies just like to push people around.
Right.
It's working so far with Canada. What stopped Justin Trudeau from simply saying, and I don't think there's a person in the country who would turn around and say, oh, no, what are you doing? if you just turned around and said exactly the same thing that Sheinbaum had said, listen, you want to come out, we have no quarrel with you, but if you begin invoking tariffs on us, we will respond in kind. And guess what? $900 billion is $900 billion. It doesn't matter if you've got, the crazy mango man swinging from a chandelier in the Oval Office. The United States is, my name for these days for the U.S. is the United States of Karen. The minute the U.S. loses any of its creature comforts for more than 24 hours, the minute there's some inconvenience, they'll be screaming like banshees for the status quo to be returned to. So it's great. But what scares the hell out of me, Aaron, is that this nutcake, Trump, basically was able to stand this government on its head with nothing more than a very vague, odd tweet. And like I say, we don't know what the PS is going to be, but I guarantee you it's not over yet.
All right, let me move on to talk about a couple of things. Number one, I want to know what you think, just really quickly. We found out today from our finance minister, Eric Girard, no, we are not going to give you the tax break here beyond the GST credit that the federal government is going to give you. But Ontario is, Jim, and I was just sort of wondering out loud, this seems to me like a pretty good opportunity for someone to hop in their car, drive across the border, do all their shopping in Ontario, where they're going to save around 14 or 15%. And I wonder if the finance minister here thought about how that's going to hurt the economy by not going along with this. What do you think?
Of course not. I mean, you're quite right. And I guarantee you most of the people who go across the border to their shopping in Ontario are going to be named Tremblay because they can count too. The only people who can't count are, the symbolically driven caquistes who, on the one hand, like to cosplay at having their own country, but then are too spineless to actually throw a referendum to actually get an independence. So there we go. No. You want us to do the same with our taxes? You have to compensate us because, we're a kind of a fake, pretend independent country. I'm tired of hearing what Eric Girard has to say about anything whatsoever. The guy has run up an $11 billion deficit. He's in no position to be talking to anybody about economic planning, about fiscal responsibility. So for him to turn around and say, we're not going to get involved in this, of course, he's not going to think down the road. Of course, Quebec dollars will be spent in Ontario, but they won't care. You know why? Because basically they have managed to maintain their entre virgule independence from Ottawa.
So I want to ask you one other thing. I try to remember if this was the law or not. If you drive from Quebec into Ontario, you want to go to the LCBO, buy your booze, whatever. The law on bringing stuff back provincially, right, only applies for resale. You can bring it back whatever you want if you're just going to keep it for personal use, right?
I hope so, because let me put it this way. Some friends of mine have done that on a regular basis over the years.
Okay, fine.
But no, I could see it. I could see how it's not, if it's for personal use. Mm-hmm. And there's an entire generation of us who grew up with a particular meaning behind that phrase. But if it's for personal use, it's not going to be an issue. Okay. But anyway, you think, for crying out loud, Aaron, we can't even keep the roads maintained. You think we're going to set up checkpoints to check people's trunks to see if they're coming across with cut rate booze or cut rate stuff there, or perhaps cut rate groceries they picked up in Ontario? It's so ridiculous. And once again, here we are, maintaining our specificity, our independence, our distinctiveness. And the fact is, we just look like a bunch of backwater yokels with all our regulations and our limitations, and treating people like it's still 1943, and pretending, that people aren't giggling behind our back. But that's exactly where we are these days.
Last question. This is what started the show, and I'm going to ask this again now. The Complex Desjardins situation, they've been playing Baby Shark on a loop, trying to deal with the people who end up, the unhoused, the homeless, however you want to phrase it, who won't leave. They've been doing this apparently for about a year, Jim. We're just finding out about it now. And obviously, advocates for the homeless are saying this is cruel. It's not right. There should be a better way. Every call I took, with the exception of one, suggested, what else are they going to do? This is kind of the lesser of all evils. Where are you on this?
Exactly. I mean, I'll tell you, my very first thing as an assignment editor, as a journalist, was, can someone get the composer of Baby Shark on the phone and ask how they feel about their music being used to frighten the homeless away from various areas? But I don't know if you remember, Aaron, and this is a while ago, I think in Europe, there was a problem with homeless people being in the entranceways of various buildings, and they began blasting classical music. and it cleared it out. So, but what do you? I mean, it's great. Oh, it's terrible. It's those poor unhoused, and I hate that expression. Those poor unhoused people being inflicted with baby sharks. Shut up. They shouldn't be there in the first place. Okay, but the fact is, and I understand because I've been in that situation. I know people have been in that situation. You're coming through, and we're not talking just about a few people here. Okay, and it can be scary. It's a potential for something going horribly wrong. This is a situation which is, out of sight, out of mind, but it's not out of mind. It's real. So this building simply tried to do something. They apparently have also hired counselors to try and help these people out. But come on, get over yourself. Playing music in a semi-public place is not being inhuman. Pretending that we don't have a problem, an emergency with homelessness that should have been solved decades ago is what's really inhuman.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, you have a great weekend.
You too, buddy.